Good afternoon, and welcome to Ask an Advocate with the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I'm your host, Lauren Duff, and today we are closing out Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month with a conversation about prevention. So today we are privileged to be joined by three guests who are doing this work: Nick Silveri-Hiller, Prevention Manager at PCADV, Alex Reagle, Male Engagement and Prevention Specialist at Domestic Violence Services of Southwestern Pennsylvania, and Noah Stribrny, Coaching Boys into Men Program Coordinator at Domestic Violence Center of Chester County. And with that, we can go ahead and get started. So I'd like to begin by giving each of our guests the opportunity to introduce yourself, the organization that you work for, and tell us a little bit about how you came to violence prevention work. Nick, if you'd like to start us off.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been working in the movement for just over 9 years. And when I was at a local program, one of my main efforts was to engage men, and that included some work with coaching boys into men. I got to the work through kind of happenstance. I was always very interested in, social justice movements, and this became an opportunity for me to do this work for the long term. So that's how I ended up here and in this movement, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Nick. And Alex, you want to go next?
Yeah, so I've been at the Domestic Violence Services of Southwestern Pennsylvania for about 5.5 years now. And kind of like Nick, it was happenstance how I got here. I was a sport management major in college. And when I graduated, I was just looking around because I wanted to work with high school athletes specifically. And when this job came open, I thought it was an awesome opportunity to work with not only just one school's athletes, but athletes across the whole Tri-County area who we cover. So it was kind of like a perfect fit.
Awesome, thanks. And Noah?
Yep, and I've been at the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County for almost a year and a half now. My path to get here was a little unconventional. I was actually a high school social studies teacher for a year, and then I taught in Philadelphia, but unfortunately had a school shooting, which caused me to transition careers. And thankfully, the Domestic Violence Center was looking for someone with an education degree to work with their CBIM programs, their teen dating violence prevention programs. So I jumped right on it, been here for almost a year and a half, and have been loving it.
Wow. Well, we are grateful for all of you bringing your experience and your expertise here today to share that with other folks. Noah, let's start with just if you could define for me what teen dating violence encompasses and why it's a crucial issue for us to address.
Well, what it encompasses is, it can manifest various forms of physical, emotional, verbal, or even digital abuse, especially what we're seeing today with how prevalent social media and technology is. Teen dating violence, it involves typically one partner who engages in controlling or manipulative or aggressive behavior to really gain that power and control over their victim. And, it's really crucial that we address this because we're talking about the well-being and the development of our youth, particularly teenagers. By addressing the issue, we are seeking to not only prevent teen dating violence, but if we leave it unaddressed, we run a risk of that cycle of violence perpetuating from children as they get into adulthood. So it's really crucial that we seek to address the issue and promote healthy relationships, healthy behaviors, so that way we can promote healthy relationships and improve the betterment of our teens.
Absolutely. And Alex, what are some examples of unhealthy behaviors in a teen relationship that might not always be immediately recognized as abusive? And how can teens distinguish between like normal disagreements or signs of potential abuse?
Yeah, so some things that kind of are out of the ordinary that are kind of harder to see would be like verbal put downs. Sometimes they try to twist it as hey, I'm just trying to benefit you. I'm looking out for you when they say some things. Going through each other's phones, seeing who they're calling, texting, things like that. Once again, kind of twisting it into those caring behaviors. And one we're seeing a lot more now than in the past is like the tracking of locations. So forced sharing of like snap maps, find my friends on like iPhones. And specifically now we're seeing it with Life 360. Their partners are demanding they get the account, follow the account, and things like that. And for overall, we kind of think that as long as we have consent to share those locations, they communicate what's okay, what's not okay, and then they set and establish those boundaries, and then they respect those boundaries. Those aren't necessarily those abusive behaviors, but once one of those things gets crossed, that's where we see that kind of turning into an abusive relationship when it's all about that power and control.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are you seeing in your work, and either of you, or any of the three of you can answer this, but are you seeing in your work any of those things being normalized, especially on the tech side of things, with as much as teens and young adults are using their phones, using other technology, have any of these like behaviors that might be signs of an unhealthy relationship become more normalized among youth?
I was going to add on to what Alex said, especially with the location sharing. A lot of times when we go into schools, that's something that we talk about very frequently, and we'd like to emphasize that, being in a relationship does not mean that you have to share your location on Snap Map, iPhone, Life 360. It's not a necessity to share your location in healthy relationships. If you choose to do so, that's great if you have that trust with each other, but it's not a necessity to have your partner's location on numerous and multiple different location sharing apps. And we see that in the schools, and what the teens are saying is those behaviors, those kind of controlling behaviors are really normalized. And it was a great point brought up by Alex.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if any of you have anything to add to that before I go on. Well, both of your organizations run programs focused on preventing teen dating violence. So if you could both give an overview of what those programs are and how they aim to make an impact for teens. And Noah, if you want to go first.
Yeah, definitely. So at the Domestic Violence Center, we run a teen dating violence program that we implement in just over 60% of public schools, public high schools across Chester County. We're in 3 charter schools and 4 community youth serving organizations as well. And our program primarily focuses on teaching teens about healthy relationships, identifying red flags in relationships, kind of like what Alex just talked about, and also like how to help yourself or a friend who may be experiencing violence in a relationship or even violence at home. We always give students an opportunity to answer a survey where they can also provide feedback on the program, where they can share responses like what they learned. And I'm super happy because the feedback has always been overwhelmingly positive, which is great. Being able to see, just how important this information is to teens, being able to have them share with us what behaviors they see are being normalized that are unhealthy. And it really just shows, the difference the program's making in the students, increasing their abuse identification skills, red flag identification skills, and, how to help yourself or a friend or a loved one who may be experiencing abuse.
Thanks so much. And Alex, tell us about the initiatives that y'all are doing at your program.
Yeah, so with our high school students, we run a program called Bloom 365. It was developed out of Arizona, and currently we're one of like the only organizations outside of the state of Arizona who run the program, which is a neat little fact for us. But it's a 7-dose curriculum, so we go into schools either 7 straight days, a couple of days a week, or at some schools we go once a weekend to develop those skills to be in healthy relationships. As it kind of covers a lot of what Noah said, those red flags, healthy behaviors in relationships, but also we talk about like boundaries to see or barriers to seeking help, why students who might be going through this, why they're uncomfortable to get that help. We talk about how to help a friend, how self-esteem can play a major role in abusive and healthy relationships as well. But yeah, overall, we just want to give them the tools and resources to be as safe and healthy in all their relationships as possible.
And Alex, how would you say that these programs empower teens to recognize and to address teen dating violence that they might recognize in their own relationships or maybe among friends or their other peers?
Yeah, I think by giving them real scenarios, things that they could actually see in their relationships, not just things that we hear on the news or kind of dream up in our wildest imaginations. These are actual things that happen that we see teens go through. So I think that gives them that tangible evidence. And then we give them, like I said, the tools and resources to put it into their everyday lives. We give them ways to help friends, resources that they connect themselves to. But we also make ourselves as available as possible. We say, hey, every day during class, after class, before class, if you ever want to come and talk to us. And we have these they call them elephant in the room cards. They're just anonymous cards where they can feel comfortable to ask questions. They can give us their phone numbers, emails, so someone from our agency can reach out to them if they need that help as well.
That's such a cool idea. I really love the thought of like having them be able to ask questions without necessarily like raise their hand and do it publicly or raise an issue or a concern that they have. One of the statistics that we see is that only 33% of teens that are in an abusive relationship ever talk about it with somebody. At least as far as like reporting that they've talked about it with somebody. So is that something that you all have seen in your experience? Like how willing are the teens that you work with to like open up and talk about their own experience or what they've seen during these programs?
I would say, yeah, that 33% sounds about right. Especially coming to talk to us face to face. With those anonymous cards, we see it happening a lot more often. Especially because it's just a phone number or it's just an email that someone can reach out to. We don't have to have them have their name, school they go to, anything like that. So that we've seen a little bit more, but yeah, during that face-to-face interactions at the schools, it happens. It absolutely happens, and we're super happy and grateful to help those students that come to us. But it's not as high of a number as maybe some people would think or would want.
Noah, what have you seen as far as like engagement and willingness to open up and talk about personal experience in your time working with youth?
Yeah, I would say we see very similar things, like what Alex talked about. We'll have students come up to us when we deliver these presentations, after we're done and we have one-on-one time with them. But we don't. I wish it was more frequent, I guess. I wish it was more frequent. A lot of times too, we emphasize that like, reaching out to a DV agency may be a little intimidating for a high school student, or like calling a hotline seeking services may be a little intimidating. So we always emphasize too that we're on, social media, we're on X, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. So if students who are experiencing this type of abuse or experiencing relationship violence, they can always reach out via social media and we're able to help them out through that way. Because let's face it, for high school students, they're most likely going to feel a little bit more comfortable maybe reaching out via social media than calling a domestic violence hotline or reaching out to a domestic violence counselor on their own. So we see a little bit more engagement through our social media avenues, which has been really great.
That's such a great point, and glad to know that there are alternative ways for folks to reach out for help. I know a lot of younger people don't want to, pick up the phone and make a phone call, but you're right, like sending a text message, sending a private message on social media does seem like it might be a much more approachable way for some people to reach out and seek help. So I wanted to see if there's any anecdotes or success stories that you might want to share to kind of highlight the impact of, in particular, like the coaching programs or the other programs that you do on the teens in your communities.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I have a few little success stories that we have here related to our teen dating violence prevention that I wanted to share. So we had a few teachers say, and I quote, that the presentation and the program focuses on the essential and difficult aspects like the patterns of abuse and gave the students the ability to recognize this pattern. She also states, I can honestly say this is the most valuable presentation that I've witnessed in my classes. We've also had another teacher say that it's important, our kids need to hear it. Another great thing too is when we're in these schools running our teen dating violence programs, sometimes we'll actually have CBIM students who are there taking the program as well. So it's always good. We see little success stories and anecdotes about CBIM athletes being there and enjoying the fact that, they're learning about this stuff on the field and in the classroom now in relation to teen dating violence. But yeah, just a couple success stories that I wanted to share there about the teachers. Um, all overwhelmingly positive, which we love. We love.
Great. Alex, what about you? Do you have any anecdotes or success stories that you can share?
Yeah, so going back, at least for the in-school programs, yeah, when we get some of those elephant in the room cards, those anonymous cards, a lot of them are really positive sentiments. So not just questions, but it's like, hey, I have experienced this. I've seen it in my home life. My friend's been going through this. So we're like really glad that you came in and gave us these presentations to help not only me, but our other classmates as well. And then the teacher follow through, like this isn't just a 1 year presentation we do. The teachers are excited to have us back every year. We've been going to some schools with this program for 3 years now. So they keep wanting us to come back. They're reaching out to us to come into their schools in order to get this program, which I think kind of holds a lot of resonates a lot to show how much they like and respect the program. And then on the CBIM side, we hear a lot of success with the coaches who are like following through with what the card series is about. We had a coach reach out to us that said that they had to unfortunately suspend a player because they were doing things that were detrimental to the team, going against what they learned in CBIM. So just being able to have those coaches who are ground in the program, who are committed to it to that extent, I think shows a lot of really success in the program.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible that they aren't you have that evidence that it's not just something where they're going through and going through the motions of the program, but they're actually implementing it into the culture of the team and of the school, and accountability on that kind of levels is really impressive. So speaking of, y'all have mentioned CBIM, which just for everyone listening, that's the Coaching Boys into Men program that you can see behind Alex when he's speaking right now. So can you just tell us a little bit about how the Coaching Boys into Men program works and how it's tailored to resonate with teenage boys and encourage their active participation?
I would just say, first and foremost, with CBIM, we always love to utilize the influence of the coaches because coaches are often positive role models for many male athletes. The coaches then with CBIM, since they have that positive relationship, they have that trust with their athletes, they're the ones who facilitate the lessons with the assistance of myself. But having that positive relationship and that trust with their athletes is why we make sure that the coaches are the ones who are there implementing the lessons. But second, too, using real life scenarios and examples that teenage boys can relate to, making the concepts of like bystander intervention more tangible to the teenage boys and applicable to their own lives. And then lastly, empowering teenage boys to become leaders on and off the field by promoting healthy relationships and preventing teen dating violence in their communities and in their school.
Yeah, and just to follow up with what Noah said, I think the important thing is it is the coaches doing the programs. They have the trust, respect of their athletes already, and we're just kind of in the background. Like, yeah, the athletes, hopefully they do know us. They see us as a friendly, familiar face. But we don't see them every day. We don't have the trust that they have with their coaches. So that's who really drives the program. And when we see the best results with these coaches are when they are taking the program into their own hands. They're using personal anecdote, like Noah said. They're telling real life stories. They're telling stories about what they've gone through, what they experienced when they were athletes, both on the good and bad side. We know how much things have changed since even we were athletes. So just the coaches using their real life experiences to kind of tell, hey, this is where I made the mistake. If I could go back and do things differently, I would. But unfortunately, we can't. But we can give you the information to not do the same things that we did because we kind of regret it looking back from what we did. So yeah, I think that's one of the most impactful things for the athletes to hear from those coaches.
Yeah, that's really great. And to have that level of relationship already established and to build upon that, and also to have coaches that are willing to be vulnerable and share their own personal experience, I'm sure is really relatable for the athletes as well, to build that relationship and that bond with them and the respect that they have there even further. So that's fantastic. In addition to the Coaching Boys program, PCADV I know has been working on a similar program for girls that has been piloted in a few programs, including some of yours. But Nick, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what inspired the creation of the Coaching Girls Beyond the Game program, and how might that differ from other prevention programs that have been aimed at teenage girls?
Yeah, of course. We're really excited about this program. Both Domestic Violence Services of Southwestern PA and Domestic Violence Center of Chester County. They both were two of the three pilot sites. So I just wanted to give them a shout out, along with Victim Services Incorporated was the third pilot site. So one of the things that we heard a lot from programs implementing coaching boys into men was that schools wanted a similar program for their female athlete programs. And so we kind of looked out to things that already existed out there. And we weren't, there were some have been working good for folks, but we didn't feel like they were going to work for our programs. So we decided to work with a consultant. And by we, I really should, I mean, my colleague Denise, I have to give her a shout out. She did most of the work on this. But we worked with a consultant to develop a program that kind of mirrors Coaching Boys into Men. So just like it has, Coaching Boys into Men has the 12 cards, Coaching Girls Beyond the Game has similar 12 cards that kind of cover similar topics, talking about how to support a friend who might experience abuse, education about healthy and unhealthy relationships, but also a lot of empowerment lessons within it. So we wanted to develop this to help our programs to kind of have that companion piece. And from what we've heard from programs, it seems like it's been a big success, and not just helping, get coaching boys into men into schools, but schools are one or the other, and they're a really good companion piece to getting folks through the door. And of course, Alex and Noah, you have the on the ground experience of doing it. So, but yeah, that was the inspiration for it from PCADV.
Yeah, and both Alex and Noah, if there's anything that you would like to share about the Coaching Girls program, we'd love to hear that as well from the on the ground perspective.
Yeah, CGBG is, I think it's a wonderful program. As Nick said, we looked at some different avenues for coaching girls programs that were out there, and as he said, just none of them really fit what we thought our coaches would want. So when PCADV said they were making this program, they were going to make it available for a select few programs, we had to jump at the opportunity. And we were really lucky that we got selected. And since then, we've implemented with about 6 different programs over the past couple of years, and it's been an awesome experience. And just like with CBIM, we've gotten really positive feedback back from both coaches and athletes who have experienced the program.
Yeah, similar to what Alex was saying, we've implemented Coaching Girls Beyond the Game pretty frequently. Before I got here, we piloted it back a few years ago, I think before the pandemic, or it might have been right after the pandemic. I believe right after in 2021, I believe. But since I've started, yeah, we've run it with numerous teams, and we've seen, similar to CBIM, a lot of positive responses, which is great. And kind of like what we talked about, what Nick talked about, it's a great opportunity to really get into other schools, get CBIM into other schools, and also Coaching Girls Beyond the Game. But it's been nothing but positive since we've brought it here and since we've implemented it.
That's wonderful to hear. And I know that PCADV and particularly the prevention team, we're excited to see that pilot program grow into bigger initiatives. So thank you for volunteering to be the first on that, and I'm glad to hear that it's going so well. But have there been any challenges that you all have encountered in implementing either of the coaching programs at all? And if so, how have you addressed those?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest challenges is just finding coaches who are willing to do the program. You can send out as many emails as you want, as many phone calls as you want. But in the long run, they can go unread, unnoticed, unheard, whatever it is. So, in order to combat that, we've tried to strengthen our relationships with athletic departments as a whole. So getting in with the athletic directors, coaches who are currently implementing in order to kind of get those trusted people to the coaches to implement the program with us, and then advocate for it. Telling them, hey, I know we coach against each other, but in the end, we know we want to make our players better on the field and off the field. And this program really does work. So that's one of the strategies we've used. And also, I'll just show up to practices sometimes. If I see they have an open gym on the schedule, or their practice ends at 6, I'll kind of go to the practice field around then, and just try to catch the coach as he's going by, because and then we know coaches, like I said, they want to make the athletes better, but they're busy. They have a lot of things going on. They have no one's a full-time high school coach for the most part. So they have other things going on. And just to get the information in front of them can all really take to kind of turn some of those conversations into commitments.
Yeah, we've run into some similar challenges here at the Domestic Violence Center, really with just getting coaches to really buy into the program. We've taken some similar approaches, kind of like what Alex was saying, but also trying to have more of a presence on our social media pages. So maybe utilizing testimonials from athletes, from coaches, and posting them on our social media pages in the hopes that other coaches from other districts will see that. But yeah, that's been a challenge. But we also ran into a pretty unique challenge last season where we had some male program participants state that they felt like the curriculum kind of labeled men as abusers. And obviously, we never want that to be the case. Males can be victims. Abuse is not just based on one gender. So what we did then for this season is we created supplemental resources that provided statistics relating to male victims. We also emphasized that coaches try to use more inclusive language as well. Because, if in the card series, if we're not using that inclusive language and when we're referring to as abusers as, him or a man, that gives off that vibe that men are abusers and only men can be abusers when, as we all know in the field, that's obviously not the case. So we created supplemental resources with those statistics, urge coaches to use more inclusive language. And this season, we've seen that issue, that problem has not come up again. And really happy for that.
That's really great to hear that you were able to hear those concerns and adjust the program and add some additional resources to make sure that everyone was feeling heard and included in the way that the curriculum was presented. So that's great. And in addition to what y'all just talked about, is there any other advice that you would give to other advocates or other domestic violence programs, or maybe somebody at a school or a coach who might be looking to implement something like this in their community?
One of the biggest ones I would say is just persistence. I very rarely have been able to, on the first phone call, reach out to a coach. They say, yeah, let's get this training in, and then they implement it that season. Some of these relationships have been built over 2-3 years times before they implement. So just being persistent, staying with those coaches, and then building relationships is another huge one that we do. Not only do we go into like I said, the practices to see the coaches and athletes implement the program, but every Friday night for a football game, I'm at one of the team's games that are implementing the program, just to show that support and let the coaches know. So I'm supporting the teams that way. We are in their communities. We go to school board meetings for a lot of the schools that we work with. And we're in the schools as well. Like I said, we do school programs with a lot of the programs that run CBIM as well, and CGBG. So just being able to be that familiar face to the athletes and coaches, administration, I think that's a really beneficial thing in order to grow the program to be as successful as it can be.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement, especially with persistence and especially with building those relationships. I think the biggest thing is actually getting out there in your community, meeting people, developing and maintaining those positive relationships. Really can't emphasize that enough. And kind of like what Alex said, when we're in the schools, it's a perfect opportunity for us to meet potential coaches, to meet the ADs, and to have these discussions about, how we can implement this program going forward in the future. And then also too, like one example, we used to have this art show that was used for fundraising. Now it's used to increase connections. It's a high school student art show. So that's another opportunity for us to get in the schools. So any chance or any initiatives that we have that relate to getting into the schools, building those connections, we try to take the most advantage of them, because kind of like what Alex was saying, you want them to know who you are. You want them to be able to recognize who you are, put a name to a face. And you do that by getting out there, making those connections, and then maintaining those connections, like Alex said, keeping that persistence as time goes on. It's so crucial.
Yeah. Well, we are just thrilled to hear about what a positive success that these programs have been for both of your organizations and across the state. And I just want to highlight that y'all are from like completely different corners of the state. And so I think it's really cool that this is a program that can work in like any school district in like any county across the state of Pennsylvania. So it's really something to see it thriving in like different parts of the state too. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I want to kind of dive into how somebody can get help or maybe help a friend or a loved one when they're seeing teen dating abuse or teen dating violence. So if you're a teen who thinks that they may be in an abusive or unhealthy relationship, what could they do? Where could they go to find support or help?
We always suggest just going to your local agency, whoever it is. And it's really, a Google, or if we go onto PCADV's website, there's the list of every agency in the state where you can go to find those resources. Because like we said, most people there, they want to help. They genuinely want to help people, which is one of those obstacles or barriers that people have to go over. They don't know if the person they're calling is going to help them, or if they're just going to tell them what to do, what's wrong with them, or their relationship, that just saying those negative things. So we know people, especially at DVSSP, they're there to help. They're not going to tell them what to do. They're not going to pry into their relationship, ask them questions that they're not comfortable with. They're just kind people who genuinely want to help them. So that's what we suggest. Or if they're afraid to make that call, just go to someone they trust, whether it's in the school, their home, the community. I'm just finding one of those trusted adults who they can just vent to, ask for advice, going to something like that.
Yeah, once again, absolutely in agreement. Reaching out to your local DV agency. But one thing too, like what Alex said, I really want to emphasize is leaning on someone that you can trust. Whether that's a teacher, whether that's a coach, if you play sports, a counselor, a friend, even a family member. Leaning on someone you trust for support is very, very crucial. But yeah, I mean, reaching out to your local DV agency, like, for example, the DVCCC, we can help individuals create safety plans. These agencies all have similar missions, similar goals, help victims of DV and survivors of DV. So that'd be the biggest thing, reaching out to your local DV agency and leaning on the people that you can trust and the people that love you.
And I do want to ask a quick follow-up question about confidentiality when teens are reaching out to their local domestic violence program. I know that the support that y'all offer is available 24/7, it's free, and it's confidential. But could you just talk a little bit about, like, for a teen reaching out for help, what that confidential piece of that means?
Yeah, so what we say when we go into the schools is anything you say to us stays between us. The only thing that doesn't is that we're mandated reporters. So if you say someone over the age of 18 is abusing you, we have to report that by law, but we want to keep them as safe as possible. But outside of that, anything that you say stays with us. Like if a teacher comes to talk to us, a school employee, your parents, a judge, police officers, whatever that might be, we'll just say, hey, we cannot confirm nor deny we even had a conversation, let alone what we talked about. So we really try to reassure those students that it's just us having a conversation. No one else is going to know anything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime we have someone reach out, all that information stays confidential. It stays between the individual who reached out and the individual who was, providing that support. We always want to emphasize that because, sometimes, like we said earlier, it can be a little bit intimidating reaching out. It can be a little scary. And sometimes, that fear can prevent you from reaching out, that fear of being judged, fear of embarrassment, perhaps. So the big thing I want to emphasize is everything stays between us. Everything that's said, really want to emphasize that to really increase that comfortability for those students to really reach out and get those services, because it's crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, you had mentioned, oh, sorry, no, not Nick. No, you had mentioned that that you encourage students to reach out via social media. And so that confidentiality, does that extend to conversations that are had over social media if they're with an advocate from the program?
Absolutely, 100%, 100%.
Great. That's so great for folks to know. So thank you for filling us in on the details of that. And what would you recommend for teens who have a friend that they think might be in an unhealthy or abusive relationship, and how they could approach that, whether that's through having a conversation with that teen or reaching out to someone else for help? Like what would you recommend that teens in that kind of situation do?
Yeah, so with the Bloom program that we run, the stat we have is 80% of teens would go to a friend before they go to an adult, if they're experiencing this going through help. So we recommend what we call, it's an acronym, it's LEVEL. So just listen, let them guide the conversation. You shouldn't interrupt with your opinions, your advice, because at this moment that might not be what they need. They just need someone to listen to them. And then empathize. And empathy, we know it can be really hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes, especially if you're a teen and you haven't experienced something like this. But just trying to see what your friend is going through could be something that's really beneficial for your friend coming to you. The validate, they believe them first and foremost. No, let them know that you understand what they're going through. You trust what they're going through. Don't let those doubts creep in. Don't feel like they're the one that they're the reason that it's happening. Don't feel that blame that it's on them. And then encourage them. Just say, hey, you might stay in this relationship. Maybe it's not what I would want or think you should do, but just know if you do stay, I'll continue to be this listening ear for you. Anytime you need someone to come and talk to, I'll be that person. And then that last L, link them to resources. Every Bloom program we do, we give them a workbook that has our DVSSP's helpline. It has a lot of resources for Bloom. So just give them the resources that they might need to get the help that they want.
Yeah, and what we see from our data that we've collected from our teen dating violence programs is we see between 60 and 70% of teens that we survey have reported a friend or family member who has experienced abuse. So it's a very, very prevalent issue. And I'm just going to reiterate a lot of the things that Alex just said. First and foremost, never want to take a judgmental approach. That's one of the worst possible things that you could do to someone who's in an abusive relationship, is being judgmental. Second, like Alex said, listen to them, right? Listen to them, listen to their experiences, listen to what they're telling you, and be supportive, right? And then give them that options, like refer them to the local DV agency, right? Maybe point them in a direction where they can create an online safety plan, or someone who can help them create a safety plan. Point them in the direction of different resources that can help victims or victim and a survivor of relationship abuse. And then can't emphasize this enough, if that friend or family member decides to go back to that person, still have to support their choice at the end of the day, and be supportive of whatever their choice is, even if you're not in agreement of that choice. So being non-judgmental, listening to that person, validating their feelings, validating their experiences, providing them with those options, and then supporting their choice, whatever that may be.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think that's an important ending point to remember, is like leaving that door open, no matter what choice they make in that moment, that you're going to be there for them, regardless. So that's wonderful advice from both of you. Thank you for that. And for parents, caregivers, teachers, other trusted adults, do you have anything different that you would advise to them if there's a teen that discloses that they might be experiencing or witnessing dating violence, how to support them, how to handle that?
Yeah, it's a lot of the same things. But especially for adults, treat the relationship seriously. There can be like this kind of first thought, well, it's just a teenage relationship. They're in high school. Like, how serious could it be? And we know it can be extremely serious, extremely dangerous. So don't just downplay the relationship just because they're teens, they're in high school. And then just once again, reach out to those local resources. One of the biggest things we could recommend is, you call that helpline, and just talk to the advocates there. Like, hey, I'm a parent. I'm a guardian, someone who's trusted in the care of these kids, and this is happening. What can I do? How can I be as best of an advocate ally for these people coming to me as possible? Because every situation is a little different. So if they're able to explain exactly what's going on, those DV advocates will be able to give them the correct information to, once again, be as helpful as possible.
Yeah, for parents, caregivers, trusted adults, teachers, yeah, biggest thing, being compassionate, validating their experiences, not minimizing their experiences just because they're teenagers, like Alex was saying. And then also too, like I know we talked about confidentiality, like respecting their privacy too. I think that's a big thing. When I feel like when someone who's a victim or is experiencing relationship abuse, when they come to that trusted adult, they have trust that that person that they're giving that information to is going to help them. And they're trusting that they're going to do the right thing. So keeping that information private, while at the same time offering available resources, like we said. It could even be, not just your local DV center, but the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I know breakthecycle.org is another great one. So there's tons of resources out there that are readily available too. But yeah, kind of similar to what we talked about if you're trying to help a friend or a family member, being non-judgmental, listening to them, validating their feelings and experiences, then giving them those options and that support.
That's great. In your experience, are there any common misconceptions or maybe like barriers that parents or caregivers may face when thinking about or addressing teen dating violence? And how can they maybe overcome some of those misconceptions or barriers?
I would say just to have as much confidence as possible. Like I said, just getting that professional help. Because we all want to do the right thing. We all want to be as helpful as possible, and that could be a huge barrier to be in fear that we're going to say the wrong thing or guide them down the wrong path. Um, and just listen to what they say. Don't like Noah said, kind of don't overstep what you're doing, because you might think you're doing the right thing for the situation, but it's not what that teen, that person in your life is needing at this moment. So it can be really hard to take that step back, but still let them guide what they want to do, because it's their relationship, it's their situation. They probably know what's best they needed at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also too, another thing parents could do is perhaps educate themselves on teen dating violence, right? Its prevalence, like the warning signs of abuse, like red flags in relationships, and then like the potential impact that it has on our youth, especially when it goes unchecked. I think too, creating that supportive and non-judgmental environment, especially for like parents and teachers, um, create that environment where it's supportive, it's non-judgmental. Teenager can feel comfortable, can trust, or has that trust to say what they want to say without fear of being judged or fear that it may spread to another individual, right? Not keeping that conversation private, like we talked about. And then like kind of like what Alex just said, ensuring that you're there to listen to them, you're going to support them no matter what. And like we said, regardless of what their choice is, still have to be supportive.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on what Alex and Noah are saying, and with the resources. I just wanted to let folks know PCADV used to have an app for parents and caregivers about having these conversations. We don't have that app anymore, but we took everything that was on that app and we put it on our website. So if you go to our website, there's a section, a little tab that's called About Abuse, and we have another, and you can go there and you can find a section about strategies for parents and caregivers. And I also want to shout out Love is Respect. It is designed for teens to kind of read, but I think it's also an important resource for parents to read and caregivers to read, because I think sometimes you, like folks were saying, you just don't even know what to say, and I think that can give parents and caregivers some language to how to talk to their teens about it. So just wanted to shout out those two things.
Yeah, we're going to put that link in the chat for folks so that they can find those resources easily on our website. But Nick, you brought up something that I was going to ask about, which is like, we've talked a lot about like if someone comes to you and discloses, but Nick, do you have anything, or any of the other guests that you would advise for parents if their teen doesn't come to them, but they want to start the conversation about healthy relationships, or maybe on the flip side about concerns they have, or even if they think that maybe their teen could be like the one doing the potentially abusive relationship behaviors. Like, how can parents start those really tricky conversations?
Yeah, for sure. Full disclosure, I'm not a parent. So, but I think that I think from my experience, the best way to talk to younger folks is through things that they like or are interested in. So, if, a younger person is watching a movie, right, and there's unhealthy behavior or unhealthy relationships, like, happening in the movie or TV show, like you can use that as a place to be like, hey, let's talk about this. That's not right. That's not a healthy relationship. That's kind of, that's not good. So I think kind of starting wherever they are and kind of using their language the best you can. And again, like going to, I think Love is Respect is a great resource because it gives us some of that language, right? Because sometimes you just don't know what language you can even use. Like, that doesn't, um, I know for me, sometimes I can get too detailed and use big academic words. I'm like, that's not what's needed here. Like, this is a simpler way to say it. So I think starting from those places is, how you can have them. And I'd say one last thing. I think kind of the idea with coaching boys into men is also a really good model where it's just really short, like 10, 15-minute conversation. So you don't have to have, an hour and a half dissertation on healthy and unhealthy relationships, but maybe in a 10-minute car ride after, driving someone from a practice or on the way to shopping or something like that, having like a little mini conversation and kind of putting those out there over time, build up that knowledge.
Yeah, and I was actually gonna kind of address what Nick said. We actually give out air fresheners for cars that have like conversation starters on there because we know that's kind of like it's not as an intimidating of an environment, right? You're not, or that child, they're not looking you in the eye. There's not that full concentration on it. Like you're still doing something else, so they might feel more comfortable to have that conversation because it's not as just pressure focused on that conversation. So yeah, we think car rides is like a great way to do it.
Yeah, and two, like we also, in terms of like people who want to educate themselves, like parents and caregivers, I would also say like there's social media groups out there too. Loveisrespect.org is a great one too that Nick plugged. That's a fantastic one. But like, yeah, there's social media groups, community events as well that you could take advantage of, where you can actually, meet people in the field, educate yourself, on these topics. But yeah, I think doing the more research and really educating yourself on the topic is really only going to be beneficial, especially if you want to have those conversations. And I think too, when having those conversations, I think the earlier the better. Perhaps like that middle school age, not like elementary school having these conversations, obviously, but I think the earlier the better because having these conversations when your child just graduates high school, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to really educate them on understanding these warning signs, these red flags. So I think starting a little bit earlier is also recommended.
Yeah, thank you all. That makes a lot of sense. And hopefully that information will be helpful to folks out there listening that have teenagers or preteens or young adults in their life that they want to make sure they're helping and supporting in their relationships to make sure that they're having healthy relationship experiences. So I just want to see if there's anything that we didn't cover today that anyone wants to add, anything at your programs that's like coming up that you'd like to share with folks. Any final parting thoughts? Or you can give me if you want people to take one thing away from what they listened to today, what would you want that one takeaway today? And Alex, I'm gonna call on you to go first here.
Yeah, we know teen dating violence, it's way too prevalent. Like the stat you gave, 1 in 3 student, 1 in any is way too many for us to go through for people to experience. So It can happen at any point at any time. There's no cookie cutter image for who can be in an abusive relationship. So it's really important for everyone to be informed, everyone to have this knowledge, and how to help those around them, because you could be the person that does make that difference in someone else's life. So just be as informed and educated as possible for your young people in your life.
Yeah, and I would say too, like what Alex said, when it comes to teen dating violence, relationship abuse, it's not gender specific, right? Definitely want to emphasize that. And two, one of the things I would say that I really want to drive home is, if you know someone who's going through this, because we see it, like we said, between 60 and 70% of teens have told us that they've seen a friend or a family member who is in a abusive relationship. Biggest thing I cannot emphasize enough is be there to support that person, be non-judgmental, listen to them, provide them with that support, provide them with options. And then, like we talked about, supporting them regardless of what their choice is. If they choose to stay in that relationship, obviously you might not agree with it, but still be supportive. Don't be judgmental. Can't emphasize that enough. But yeah, that's what I would say. There's just the strategies to really help someone that who is experiencing this, because based on our data, we're seeing so many teens who know individuals who are experiencing relationship abuse, which is really unfortunate. So we want to really emphasize those points. Absolutely.
And I can just add on, just emphasizing that across the state, we have experts just like, Alex and Noah in every one of the communities in Pennsylvania to have these conversations, to talk to folks. Even if you just have a question, you can reach out to the programs. So I want to just really highlight, we have folks all over the state who this is their work and want to do this work and are really good at doing this work. So I just wanted to highlight that and give all the programs a shout out. And just if you're listening and you're not a part of a program, or if you're part of a school or any other organization, please reach out to your local programs because they have a lot of awesome resources to help you out.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much, not just for being here today, but for the work that you're doing in your communities and like the knowledge that you've shared. We really appreciate your time and appreciate you being here. And we hope that everyone has enjoyed this and will join us next time for Ask an Advocate. Thanks, everyone.